Give me them walls made out of bones. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're here for another review video. Welcome if you're new here. Hi. Today I wanted to review the fourth book in the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon, The Mask Falling, but I realised that I hadn't actually talked about the first three books in the series, so I don't know how this is going to go. Some quick disclaimers before we start. I was sent a free digital advanced reader copy of The Mask Falling from the publisher via NetGalley. Nobody's paying me to talk about books, and all my opinions are my own. I will eventually have a overbooked video for this entire series that keeps things pretty spoiler-free, but I do want to just talk about The Mask Falling. So this is going to be spoiler-free for The Dawn Chorus and The Mask Falling, and there will probably be minor spoilers for the first three books. I'm not going to go into any huge events, but I will be talking about the fourth book, so you'll pick up what's happened, I expect. So if you haven't read this series yet and you don't want to be spoiled, click away now. In the very, very distant future, when I've got all the way to S in Overbooked, I will talk about this in a bit more detail. So The Bone Season is a adult sci-fi dystopian kind of series. It does often get mislabeled as YA, I think because Samantha Shannon was a young woman when she wrote it and people can be kind of sexist. Also because it has a young adult female protagonist, and at the time it came out in 2013, I think there was a lot of YA dystopian around. There still is, but at the time. But they are technically adult and they do get quite dark in later books especially. I mean, book one is fairly dark, but yeah, I don't think all teenagers would be able to cope with this series. It would, however, be quite a good crossover series if you like YA and you want to read more adult. As I say, this series started in 2013 with a fair amount of buzz because Samantha Shannon was a young author who signed a 7-book series, and publishing loves a, oh, aren't they young kind of story. So the books are The Bone Season. This isn't going to be in focus for you, but just let me gesture. The Bone Season, The Mime Order, The Song Rising, and then, of course, The Mask Falling. There are novellas as well in the series, and I think the one that's most pertinent to this review is The Dawn Chorus, which comes between The Song Rising and The Mask Falling. Oh, Editing Judith's going to have a fun time putting the covers into this one. There is also another novella called The Pale Dreamer, which comes before The Bone Season, but I haven't read that. Just a quick bit of information about Samantha Shannon. She is a British author. She went to Oxford. She was young when she got her first publishing contract. That's pretty much everything you need to know. Her other work that is known is The Priory of the Orange Tree. It is fantastic, but I will link her website below if you want any more information about her. So my standard review format is a plot summary now, and this is the point where it gets really tricky because, like, how much do you explain about The Bone Season when we're talking about book 4? I think I'm going to save my full trying to describe this world and everything for Overbooked. So let's focus in on The Mask Falling. Now is the time to turn away if you really don't want to be spoiled. So we have our main character Paige, who lives in a dystopian world where voyants, people who can contact the spirit world in various different ways, are effectively criminals. They're pushed into an underground kind of crime society. In previous books we've seen Paige taken to a prison camp where she finds out that the world is not all that it seems and there are these otherworldly creatures running things behind the scenes. But she escapes, and essentially across books 2 and 3 she starts to get more and more involved and start to take over elements of this criminal underworld and this resistance. The Mask Falling begins with Paige having fled to Paris, and events go on from there. It is blooming hard to review the fourth book in a series, so bear with me. I really like the setting for these books, and this book in particular. I think if you follow Samantha Shannon on Twitter, especially around about the time of Priory of the Orange Tree's release, you'll know that she is really into really detailed world building. I was slightly worried before starting this book that this was just going to be the start of 4 books in a series that would essentially be Paige Mahoney visits insert country name here, and that there wouldn't be much substance, but actually I found it really interesting to visit Cyan Paris. I thought what worked really well was the comparison between Paris and London, particularly since in theory they should be the same, they're under this same dictatorship. So the ways in which the city's differences come through is all the more important, and I think Samantha Shannon really focuses in on that. There's this indication of quiet resistance both in London and in Paris, and it really fits in with the theme of the books. As someone for whom The Mime Order is my favourite book in the series, I thought it was really interesting to see what the underworld of Paris was like, and again how that would compare to that of London. Basically, I shouldn't have been worried. There was plenty of substance there, and it was really clear why the next step was Paris, and I didn't feel like this insert country here kind of feeling. I think Samantha Shannon pulls it off. I think she writes the setting really well. I am also just a sucker for a catacomb. Give me them walls made out of bones. I definitely found the plot of the book to be compelling. I read The Bone Season for the first time during an insomniac period in 2017, and I genuinely remember being unable to put it down, probably also contributing to the insomnia. Never mind, but I got a similar feeling with this book. I wanted to keep reading it. As the fourth book in the series, it was unclear whether this was going to start going in a completely different direction or if it was going to follow on with the old story in a really linear fashion, and I think it manages to do both. We hold on to some of the threads of the familiar, but there's new things being brought in. I think that the way that the story and the world is being made broader and opened out a lot more while still keeping the story centred on Paige is really interesting. At the moment, in this book, it still feels balanced, but I wonder if there's going to be a point in future books where that scale tips and you start thinking, goodness, there's quite a lot going on in this world and quite a lot of bad things happening to lots of people. Why is this woman so important? We shall have to see how the later books go. We've got quite a bit of a wait, I expect, until those. But as I say, at the moment, it feels really balanced and Paige feels important, but more a part of something important than anything else. I think part of why that works is we haven't got into like fully fledged worldwide resistance yet, and I think that might be the tipping point, so we'll see. The romantic aspects of this book were well done, at least I thought so. I think it's something that people either really enjoy within the series or they're not that fussed about it. I thought that that was handled well in that there wasn't too much focus on it. I don't know how much having read Dawn Chorus had an impact on that, and I think if you're thinking about reading it, it's worth reading. It's a little bit of kind of extra fluff and bump to the book. It does add something to that relationship at least. I think it's really interesting seeing Samantha Shannon begin to flesh out Paige's demisexuality a bit more. I will be interested to see if that's explored more intentionally in later books or if it's just something that's left to be. Either way, I think it will be a really interesting take on the character. Okay, now we're moving on to the things that I liked less about this book, so you need a little bit of context for this. As I say, 2017, Judith completely devoured the Bone Season, probably then completely devoured the Mime Order. I think there was a bit of a gap before I read the Songrising. Somewhere in the middle of that, my wife picked them up via audiobook because I'd recommended them. And while she did mostly enjoy them, ish, sort of, it's complicated, she did point something out to me and now I can never unsee it. So I'm going to do that for you now, so you can join me in this pain. Paige is always being beaten up throughout all of these books. Always. So I went into book 4 with that at the forefront of my mind. So maybe that had an impact on my thoughts, but my thoughts were, does Samantha Shannon hate her main character? I don't think there was a single moment in this entire book where Paige wasn't either being hurt, physically or emotionally, or in pain from those hurts. On the one hand, I do think it's really important and significant to discuss what Paige went through at the end of book 3 and really explore that and not wipe that away with a 6 months later and she's totally fine again. I think it was important to explore that and also to explore that recovery from anything isn't linear and it isn't magical and it isn't a case of the clock winds down and then you are fine again. But also, my goodness, this girl just does not catch a break across the entire book. I talked about this in my vlog when I first read this book, quite a long time ago now. My personal preference for happy things to sad things is at least a 50% of each. I prefer more happy to sad. This is not a book that's like that. This is more like 90% sad, 10% happy. I can cope with a book that is sad, I can cope with a book that is bleak, I can cope with a book where the main character is being constantly beaten up in every way possible, but it isn't my preference. I don't think that should stop you from picking this book up if you're interested. It's certainly well worth reading. Just maybe pick the time right, because this isn't a walk in the park, unless that park is filled with nightmares. If you have read this already or you've got it on deck and you're ready to read and you're thinking, gosh, what do I read afterwards? If you haven't already read Priory of the Orange Tree, I think it is a good read. Very long, but certainly worth reading. And you know, you've read 4 books in a series, why not add in one book that is essentially 4 books? Another January release that I think is very well worth reading and also includes a lot of detailed world building and interesting tidbits of detail throughout the book is The Mask of Mirrors. And finally, I was trying to think about dystopian society where death kind of featured as a thing, and I wondered about the Arc of a Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. It's not my favourite series because the romance is kind of annoying, but the world building is top notch. I was trying to think what to say, because I think if you're 3 books into a series, you probably know if you want to carry on with it or not. But if you are on the fence, if you are wondering whether you should pick this up, whether you should buy it in hardback or wait for the paperback, I would say that if you like the series so far, this is a good continuation of that series, and you can definitely see how Samantha Shannon's writing has matured in the 7-8 years since the first book came out. That's really, really significant and important, and I think hooray for her. If, like me, The Mime Order was your favourite book of the series so far, this is the book most similar to that, because we still get that underground world building and the struggle for power, and you get to see more characters within the underworld, which I really appreciated. It's also got spying and sneaking, which is always fun. So the Mime Order is still my favourite, but this might be a close second, which is pretty good going, to be honest. So yeah, I genuinely did have a really good time reading it. It was just emotional and quite exhausting as a book, I suppose. Meh, what are you gonna do? If you have read the book so far, please let me know what your thoughts on them are. Are you excited for book 4? Are you gonna read it? This video should be going out on publication day, so hopefully you will be able to read it very, very soon, if not already. Also, if you've read The Pale Dreamer, could you let me know if that's worth reading? Because I did enjoy The Dawn Chorus. I read it with the library. I don't think I would pay money for it, but I did read it and enjoy it. Is The Pale Dreamer worth reading? Let me know. While you're down there commenting these interesting things to me in the comments below, you can also follow me on all of my social media. It's in the description. You can subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. This is me talking in my normal human voice in order to speak to humans. I haven't been on camera for a while and I've completely forgotten how to do it. And I have phlegm. Why can't I talk?